The United Nations has turned 80. The UN has been around for the last 8 decades. Today, we pose a critical question that should inform Africa's UN membership. What value has the UN added to Africa? It failed to stop the deadly Congo War, still raging after 30 years. 65 years ago, the UN failed to protect Patrice Lumumba from cold-blooded assassination. In the mid-90s, the UN failed to stop the Rwandan genocide. And for the last 20 years, the UN has failed to stop the jihadist terrorism in the Sahel. For the last 3 years, the UN has failed to stop the genocide in Sudan. And after all these decades, the UN still denies Africa a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Now, to be fair, the UN has also added some value to Africa. We will touch on that. But more importantly, we must spell out the bare minimum reforms that Africa must demand if it is to remain in the UN. We are done begging. The UN must shape up or we ship out. My name is DJ Bwakali, and Africa is my superpower. Welcome to African Awakening, the Pan-African show that is awakening, uniting, and transforming Africa. If you haven't subscribed, what are you waiting for? Welcome home. If you aren't a member of this channel, what are you waiting for? Welcome home. And for those of you who are already part of this African Awakening family, thanks a lot for being here. We are building a movement of transformative Pan-Africanism. This is our first episode in the African Awakening at the UN series. We will fly you to New York to hold honest, revolutionary conversations with world leaders, especially African leaders. Let's now fly to New York and take a seat at the 80th UN General Assembly. There's a speech that will be quite instrumental to today's African Awakening conversation. South Africa's President, Cyril Ramaphosa, will be our first guest in today's episode of African Awakening. Listen closely to what he's about to say, because his words strike at the very heart of Africa's demands.
Our foreign policy is guided not only by the needs of our people, but also those of the continent of Africa and the global South. Inspired by our own history, South Africa strives to maintain world peace and also the settlement of all international disputes through negotiation and dialogue and not through war.
Peace, 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 the rarest commodity in Africa today. The Sahel is the world's epicenter of terrorism. Congo suffers one of the longest wars in modern history. Sudan's war has produced the world's worst famine. What is the UN doing? What should it be doing? Let's listen further to Ramaphosa.
As we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the UN, the relevance of this institution and various multilateral processes for the maintenance of international peace and security is being willfully undermined. There is an increasing reliance on unilateral military action in contravention of international law. The United Nations Security Council has proven to be ineffective in its current form and composition in carrying out its charter mandate to maintain international peace and security.
He hit the nail on the head, but did so diplomatically. So we will hit the nail on the head again, but strip away the diplomacy. The UN has increasingly become irrelevant to Africa's peace and security today. The UN Security Council has failed miserably in its core command of ensuring international peace and security right here in Africa. That's the diagnosis. What's the prescription?
South Africa remains deeply concerned by the erosion of the credibility of the Security Council and its failures to ensure accountability and uphold international law.
That's more diagnosis, Mr. President. We already know that the UN Security Council suffers from chronic impotence. What's the prescription to that, Mr. President?
As the security and humanitarian situations in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Sudan, Gaza, and elsewhere deteriorate, it is a matter of great concern that there are countries that continue to violate international law and also defy the United Nations resolutions and rulings, also from bodies like the International Court of Justice. We cannot and should not accept that members of this organization continue willfully to violate without consequence the charter that we have all agreed to uphold.
Again, that's more diagnosis, only that it's more specific now. Congo, Sudan, and Gaza, and Israel. He is mentioning them without mentioning them. Let's continue our search for a prescription from President Cyril Ramaphosa so that we can soak it into our revolutionary spirit and give it more radical vibes.
Therefore, as nations that have pledged to uphold the UN Charter, we have the ultimate responsibility to ensure and protect the rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, consistent with the case that South Africa brought before the International Court of Justice. There is growing global consensus. There is growing global consensus that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
Just as RSF, with their backers, like the United Arab Emirates, are committing genocide in Sudan. This is not to take anything away from the genocide in Gaza. As Ramaphosa said, there is already growing consensus of the Gaza genocide. But there is no growing consensus of the genocide in Sudan. That's why I'm hoping that Ramaphosa will touch on this.
Just last week, the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry found that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. As Palestinians continue to face genocide and famine, we have a duty to act. South Africa has acted in the interest of saving lives by insisting that the International Court of Justice should make a ruling that indeed genocide is being committed in Gaza and that it should stop. And we stand here to say it must stop.
Absolutely. The genocide in Gaza must stop. It must stop. If the UN can't stop it, who will? The genocide in Sudan too must stop. It must stop. I call on one brave African country to take the UAE to the International Court of Justice. That is how we will spotlight Sudan's genocide and ensure that it's not dumped to the dustbin of indifference and inaction. Let's give Ramaphosa another chance to share a prescription to the UN's chronic impotency.
We welcome the historic high-level meeting held yesterday on the two-state solution yesterday in this very chamber. This reflects the determination of the global majority, a global majority that now stands at 142 and more countries, that Palestinians deserve a peaceful state alongside a peaceful Israel. Many nations in the world are calling for that, and that is the voice that we believe that Israel should heed, and those powerful nations that can make a two-state solution viable and possible and implementable should act in that regard. The long overdue announcement by increasing number of countries to recognize the state of Palestine is testament to this determination.
The two-state solution, a peaceful, sovereign Palestine flourishing next to a peaceful, sovereign Israel. I totally agree 100%. As Ramaphosa said, 142 countries also agree. So why is a global majority not having their way? Because the UN remains dysfunctional, chronically impotent. We have already established that. That's the diagnosis, but we still need a prescription. What should we do? Let's give Ramaphosa yet another chance to share a prescription. Not just for implementing the two-state solution, but for stopping the genocide in Congo and Sudan, plus the terrorism in the Sahel, and all conflicts across Africa.
We have a responsibility as the member states of the United Nations to reaffirm the right also of self-determination of the people of Western Sahara.
Another diagnosis about Western Sahara, and I agree. I'm glad that he has come out and said that explicitly. Morocco won't be happy at all to hear that, but we must have these difficult conversations. Ramaphosa is about to conclude his speech. Maybe he was saving the best for last. Maybe he is about to share that prescription. Let's listen in.
The Security Council must be accountable. It must also be representative. It must be democratic and effective in executing its mandate. We can no longer accept that a large portion of the world's population is not represented in the United Nations Security Council. My own continent, Africa, home to 1.4 billion people, as well as South America, are not represented in the United Nations Security Council. This is unjust, this is unacceptable, and it must end. We want representation in the Security Council.
Well, it's going to fall on us, you and I, the people of Africa, to provide a prescription, an innovative, radical prescription that will heal the UN's impotency once and for all. I will conclude by posing this question to you. What radical, bare minimum reforms should be made at the UN so that it can become truly responsive to Africa's needs? So that it can add real value to Africa. Please share more in the comment section or send me an email on the email on your screen. We must take matters into our own hands and transform Africa. That includes transforming the United Nations. My name is DJ Bwakali, and Africa is my superpower. See you soon in our next episode of African Awakening at the UN series.